again, we're talking about business first, online second, why merchants deserve it, subtitled why we in the e-commerce ecosystem should be practicing it. A bit about my background, now a wee bit about Irish Titan. I founded us in 2004. We have around 40 Titans. That's an important number because one of the things that's unique about us is we do all of our work with just our Titans. That's how we refer to our employees. So we have a Titan only model. We don't use contractors, freelancers, or any offshore resources, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way we've built our company. What we do is we build and grow e-commerce channels. We do that with our strategy, creative, and engineering teams, which are empowered by project management, and I'll talk about that a little bit. We work with, and our official partners with, from a platform perspective, Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, and Sitecore. Of course, all of the platforms around that, or excuse me, all the technologies around that, Yotpo, Nosto, Digital, Klaviyo, etc. And we love business first, online second, as we abbreviated to B102, so much that we trademarked it. We have a trademark on it. It's framed, hanging at the front door of our office. Okay. So the punchline. Here's an overview of our conversation, the agenda, the outline, the roadmap, however you want to refer to it. Okay. So we're going to talk about what business first, online second means. You can see that that's in quotes. Technically, it's called a service mark, which is why it's SM. We're going to talk about why it's rare. We'll talk about how to find it and how to live it. These are the principles that I think that we want to try to convey in this conversation. Now, I'm going to start by laying out how we have built our business around business first, online second, and the importance of it in this mental model that we have. This will give you proof about how seriously we take it. Many of you will know who Simon Sinek is. He is an incredibly inspiring, eloquent, articulate speaker, thought leader. He wrote The Infinite Game, wrote Leaders Eat Last. It all began with this book called Start With Why. And I was fortunate enough to meet with him in a small group setting in, I think it was 2011, June of 2011. There were about 15 of us when Start With Why was between the TED Talk that he did and when the book came out. And so that was a very seminal moment in my professional development, Irish Titans history. Our why is business first, online second. Our how is partnerships and transactions, our what's build and grow e-commerce channels. But back to our why, business first, online second. That golden circle, as it's referred to in his book, Start With Why, that's on our website. It's on our business cards, the few that we use anymore. It's part of our interview process. It's part of our annual review process. It's part of our sales process. We tell our prospects that they should expect business first, online second from us. It's on our whiteboards. People can walk around and they can see when I've been talking about it because of the way I draw the golden circle. I'm not a designer, so it's a very primitive, crude drawing that tends to have its own character. And it's in this deck, right? So we're eating our own dog food, and I hope that establishes some of the framework that I think will serve as the foundation for this conversation. Okay, so business first, online second. What is it? If you want to understand what it is, sorry, I'm moving forward here in my notes. It's not about bits and bytes. For brevity's sake on this slide, I referred to bits and bytes, but I mentioned already that this is part of our interview process. So if I'm interviewing an engineer, I'll say it's not about bits and bytes. If I'm interviewing a strategist, I'll say it's not about keywords. If it is a creative, I'll say it's not about pixels. And if it's a PM, I'll say it's not about Gantt charts or budgets. It's about our client's business, their strategies, their problems, their opportunities. So it's not about the bits and bytes. It's also not about the latest acronym. It's about using the right tech at the right time in the right way, even if that tech is so 2019, right? All of those things are important, right? The pixels, the bits and bytes, the keywords, the Gantt charts, et cetera. Those are what we practice in, right? What we trade in every day. And so we better be good at those. but it's how we put all of those together to further our clients, our merchants' businesses, their strategies, how we solve their problems, how we capitalize on their opportunities. That's what business first, online second. If you don't think and deliver that, you're going to miss the mark for your clients. So why is it rare? It's rare for pretty evident reasons when you think about it, right? Because what we do in our world, in our ecosystem as digital agencies, e-commerce agencies, tech partners, SI, whatever terms you want to use and whatever is most applicable. We live at the intersection of design, technology, and marketing. 3 disciplines that are fluid, intangible, and mysterious. They're ever changing. They're difficult for people to understand. Even within our business, we might be talking agency to agency at an event, and what one of us might say about a user experience when we're trying to describe it, the other might interpret it differently than how we're conveying it. And we're the professionals. So think how difficult it is for a merchant to keep up to date on these when they're trying to run their business, right? So think about it. Is paid search marketing? Yes, of course it is. Good luck with the attribution models, right? Is email marketing, or excuse me, are email campaigns marketing? Of course they are. Good luck with the open rates, the conversion rates, acquisition rates, right? So just that very example shows how different within just marketing different disciplines are, right? Or just this year at Shopify Unite, hydrogen was mentioned. Shopify 2.0 was mentioned. Both of those released. And how are merchants to understand that and the value in that if we don't translate how those technologies support their businesses, right? What we do is at that intersection of fluid, intangible, and mysterious disciplines. To top that, in the e-commerce world that we all live in, it's even more important that we're bringing those disciplines together in a way that is directly affecting their bank account, right? Merchants are expecting to sell product profitably. It's kind of a different layer to the conversation, but they're expecting to sell product that creates revenue that gets deposited into their bank account. So there's no better testimony to the value of business first, online second in our space. Because if a traditional digital agency benefits from business first, online second, then we better demand it. Our merchants better demand it. So that's why it's rare. Let's talk a little bit about how to find it. So I think we have a little bit of a mixed audience attending, right? So I think we have some merchants, I think we have some agencies, some of the ecosystem, perhaps is how I should have titled that. If you're a merchant, there are a couple of things here that I want to encourage you to do so that you can ensure your success in finding a provider who will give you a business first, online second experience. First, I want you to roll your eyes. If you're talking to a tech partner, an SI, anybody in the ecosystem, and if their conversation is filled with acronyms or it's filled with tech speak that you can't relate to, and if it's void of conversations around what your business is, how hydrogen, for example, to relate to the previous comments about what Shopify releases here, how hydrogen might enable headless commerce to allow you as a merchant to separate the shopping cart from the experience because you have a really brand intensive e-commerce channel that demands a lot of content. Like if there's not that sort of conversation, you should literally roll your eyes within that conversation so that they understand that they are off into their navel gazing, as some people like to say, right? Inside baseball too much. They're talking about the things that matter to them without understanding that they need to relate it to you. Secondly, as a merchant, demand dialogue. So if you reach out to a tech partner or an SI, anybody in the ecosystem, I'll quit distinguishing between the two, right? Just for brevity's sake. You reach out to somebody in the ecosystem, and if they turn around a quote to you or an estimate in a day or hours without conversation, you're not going to get a business first online second experience. Now, depending on what you're asking for, that may be okay, right? Like if you're having a simple problem on a product detail page, then perhaps the solution's easy and someone can solve it pretty simply. But if you're looking to launch an e-commerce channel, re-platform, migrate from one channel to another, do an integration that was a phase 2 between your e-commerce channel and your ERP, for example, or your CRM. Those are the sorts of experiences and investments and projects that demand dialogue. So as a merchant, you should be expecting someone to ask you questions about where you came, where you're going, why you're taking that journey, how your business is demanding it, what's changed in your business to demand that. So if that dialogue isn't happening, you're not going to get a business first online second experience. And it could be absent, that dialogue could be absent because that SI maybe can't think business first online second. If you're a hammer, if that's all you have, then everything looks like a nail, right? And so if that partner you're talking to can't think in a business first online second way, and I'll talk about how the partner can do that here in a second, then they might be void of that capability. And that should raise a yellow flag, if not a red flag for you. Okay, now let's move on to the ecosystem. How do you build a team that delivers business first online second and delivers that experience for your merchants? First, you want to say in your interviewing and hiring practices, you want to say yes to curiosity, no to pizza and do. Okay. Now I'm going to paint with a broad brush here, but a lot of engineers, particularly, I'll pick on that discipline in painting this picture. A lot of engineers don't really want to engage with merchants. Not all engineers. I'm painting with a broad brush, as I mentioned, to make my point. A lot of engineers would rather jam code and have pizza and Mountain Dew slid under the door to them so they can have their headphones on, rocking out to Kiss, and jam code. That's great, right? That's totally great. That's not a business first online second kind of mentality. Depending on the size of your team, if you have 100 employees, then perhaps a chunk of your dev team can be wired like that. But you need, as a provider in the ecosystem, you need to say yes to curiosity because you need resources who will be client facing that will ask them questions, right? So regardless of whether it's strategists, creatives, engineers, PMs, you want professionals, you want talent who is curious. They will ask the merchant, the prospect, depending on where they are in the process. They will ask them about their business, about their challenges, their opportunities, how their product mix might be changing, how their business might be changing. Perhaps it's going international. Why is it going international? Have they pivoted? Were they bricks and clicks before and are now primarily online, right? These sorts of questions are what you want to hire talent for posing, right? You want your talent to ask those questions and be curious about your merchants and about your prospects' business. So if your talent wants pizza and dew slid under the door, that's not going to be business first online second. Look for talent that will be curious. Secondly, in terms of your offering, think about being and consider being more leading edge and less bleeding edge, right? Leading edge is good for merchants. Bleeding edge is bad for merchants. If you want to be bleeding edge, be a tech company, right? Like tech companies need to invest in that bleeding edge. That's why they have beta environments. It's why they have limited releases that can get tested by SIs, et cetera, right? But by the time that gets to the merchant, bleeding edge technology is usually harmful. So from a business first, online second perspective, if it's going to harm their business, you don't want to take that to the merchant, right? We have enough problems with leading edge technology that's relatively stable, right? Being a grizzled veteran, I've been around a lot of Black Fridays, Cyber Mondays, and the technology has improved greatly so that there are far fewer problems during that weekend in supporting the e-commerce channels. But there still are problems, right? So leading edge and stable, whatever we want to call behind leading edge, that still has issues. So yes to leading edge, no to bleeding edge. That's how either a merchant or someone in the ecosystem can build teams. Because when we're talking about finding business first, online second, that's really what it is building your team. As a merchant, you are going to be working with SIs and partners and perhaps other groups, right? So how do you build that group of trusted advisors that will give you that business first, online second experience? As someone in the ecosystem, how do we deliver that, right? And that's how we build a team that delivers that. So whether you're a merchant or in the ecosystem, finding business first, online second is really about building that team. Okay? So living it. How do you live your business first, online second experience? I think the most important point I can make is this first one, and it's about project management. Your project management practice and your project managers should be conductors, not ushers. Don't expect your project managers to be in thankless jobs. Don't expect them to be note takers. Your project managers should be conductors or quarterbacks or whatever analogy you want to make. So if your project manager is a conductor, a note taker would be the equivalent of an usher, right? And that's a recipe for disaster with project management because it will be underwhelming. We rebuilt our project management practice about 5 years ago because we were starting to have a lot of growing pains. We tore it apart, put it back together. We invested a lot in the time, talent, and treasure of our project management practice. We increased their portion of a budget of a project. We hired more experienced talent. We invested in better tools. We gave them a lot of power within the organization. We hired them, and we were very clear about stating that you're not a note taker. You are going to empower all of our talent and bring these projects to a successful close, right? And we're going to expect you to deliver business first, online second as part of that. As part of your job is to make sure the clients are experiencing that. That created an entire new horizon for us as a business. There are different models about business performance, right? Like hero efforts and mature efforts. We moved into that maturity model when we rebuilt our project management practice and made them conductors, not ushers, right? They empower all of our resources. Our engineers, our strategists, our creatives love our project managers now. And that's not always true at a lot of places. And in a lot of other industries, project management's a thankless job. It doesn't have to be that way for us. So if you want to live business first, online second, begin with empowering your project management to be conductors, not ushers. And hold on, once you get that, hold on to that with a white knuckle grip. Okay? Measure twice, cut once refers to documentation. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier when I talked about demand dialogue. What this means is, what it doesn't mean, maybe I'll start there, is documentation for the sake of documentation. What it does refer to, though, is that you should be capturing your merchant's market, their competition, their product set, how their business has evolved over the last few years, how it's going to evolve over the next few years. You don't necessarily have to position yourself as a consultancy or a branding agency to capture that information. Sometimes those sorts of conversations and exercises emerge because sometimes a merchant doesn't know the answers to those questions, right? There are a couple of different sorts of clients, right? A good one knows who they are and knows that they know who they are. A okay one doesn't know who they are and knows that they don't know who they are. A bad one thinks they know who they are but doesn't know who they are, right? And so those sorts of conversations uncover that. But if you don't have those conversations, you're not going to be able to establish the sorts of requirements that are going to bring their business to life. Business first, online second. So the moving from the merchant's brand and positioning and product set and revenue plans and their sort of business plans will set the table for how you capture and document and establish features and functionality, and then your UX and UI, right? And all of that should be written in at most erasable pen because things change. But if you don't capture that, then written documentation is the form of persuasion, right? And forcing yourself to write that down forces you to be able to articulate what it is the client's asking for. And you can push that upstream and force the merchant to document that too. Okay. Lastly, business first, online second. So goes the leader, so goes the culture, and so goes the culture, so goes the company. So you as a leader, if you don't believe that business first, online second is important, then your team, your company, they're not going to believe it either, right? And so I don't care if you're the owner, in my case, the project manager, a practice area lead, a division lead, whatever the case may be, a developer. If you don't believe in business first, online second, if you sort of default to bleeding edge technology instead of leading edge, or acronyms instead of common sense, common speak business language, business first, online second isn't going to take root. And if it doesn't, then you're prone to delivering a technology first solution, which doesn't work for merchants in the long run and usually not in the short. So we talked about why it's rare. We talked about how to find it, how to live it. I think that brings the formal part of our programming to a conclusion here. I'm Darin Lynch, founder and CEO of Irish Titan. I believe in business first, online second. I think everyone here should believe in it. If you're in the ecosystem, you should provide it. If you're a merchant, you deserve it and should be demanding. I'm easy to find. Social, there's my email. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to riff. Hope everybody has a great rest of the conference. Sláinte.
Thank you, Darin, for your speech. Nowadays there are so many businessmen that are thinking they just have to have their website and it will work for on its own, without business, without strategy. So
right.
It's not working like that. And you all heard that from Darin. Maybe you can tell us a couple of words about your company, how you started, why are you working with those things that you're working with?
Yeah. So when I started, so my first experience with e-commerce, as I mentioned, was in 1998. And I thought, this is really interesting. And that I thought this is going to change the landscape of technology and retail and shopping experience, et cetera. And I grew up, I was a computer science major at first, and I switched to what at the time was called management information systems, which is sort of computer science light, but it's through the business school. You still take a bunch of computer science classes, but less than a computer science major. And instead, and in place of some of those classes, you take like accounting and finance and marketing, et cetera. And I loved that because we're all wired differently, right? Some people like chicken and some people like steak and some people like vegetables. And so I was always wired to really get energy from the business application of technology, less so the technology itself. And so when e-commerce came along, and well, e-commerce started before 98, but my first exposure really scratched an itch for me because it felt like it was that perfect convergence of technology and business. So from that point forward, I sort of chased big, challenging, hairy e-commerce projects, right? Launching Office Max was a big, hairy, challenging project. Launching Leather's e-commerce project was a big, hairy project. Like I said, that was more change management because of the people resistance in 2001. Second Swing was more technology challenge because of the eBay integration. By the time Second Swing experience sort of began to draw to a close for me, I thought that there was no longer any more challenge that I could have on someone else's dime, if you will. It was time for me to start my own company, which I always knew I would do at some point. So that's when I jumped off the cliff and decided I'd make a net on the way down if I needed to, and started Irish Titan. At that point, I had also accumulated some experiences from being on the other side of the table as being the merchant, to use my terminology, our terminology, buying the services. So I had a point of view about what worked the best, the partners that I worked the best with, the partners who delivered the best sorts of solutions. So from the beginning, I wanted to build what we now call a Titan-only model, where we didn't use contractors, freelancers, or offshore resources. And again, I'm not judging anybody else's model. We all do what we feel is right for us with the opportunities surrounding us, the way we're wired, et cetera. So I started with that. That really forced me to choose a platform to begin with, right? Because absent of the flexibility and scalability, which are good things, of contractors, freelancers, and offshore resources, you can't sell. Back in the day, I couldn't have sold a NetSuite project today, a Demandware project tomorrow, and a Magento project the day after that. There are different technology stacks. There's different familiarity. So we aligned ourselves with Magento very early, and we were Magento only until 2015. Then we added Shopify and BigCommerce, and then this year Sitecore. So our business has evolved quite extensively over the years, but business first, online second has been really the foundation for it. And when I met Simon Sinek in a small group setting over a few pints, one of the things that became very apparent very clearly was our why is business first, online second. I already had it trademarked. And that had emerged when we were having, as a saying, that had emerged when we were having a happy hour, a sad hour during the troubled parts of a project. We were working with a client and really struggling with the project. And it was more on us, quite honestly. And so we were out having a few pints trying to crack that code. And I said, guys, we got to remember, we got to deliver business first, online second. And one of my Titans said, Lynch, write that down. That's really good saying. So that's how the saying even emerged in, I think it was 2009. Yeah, it would have been 2009 because I remember the client. And so then it wasn't until 2011 when I met Simon Sinek that I started to realize that that's our why, because that's when I became familiar with the model. And I think that between that and one other thing I'll talk about here in a second, they've really served as the lighthouses for how our business has grown over the years. And that other lighthouse, as I refer to it, is POTUS. And for anybody familiar with that acronym, it's not political. What it stands for is passion, ownership, teamwork, impact, and skills. Those are our 5 internal values. So the golden circle, particularly business first, online second, at the center of that, the why, that golden circle plus POTUS is what has really served as the 2 lighthouses, what has guided us through the years. It's one of the reasons we have very little turnover, even in this day and age with the great resignation, as it's being referred to. We've had very little turnover and attrition. We have high employee engagement. And I think it's because of those 2 things. I kind of riffed there, but hopefully that answered some of your question.
So Irish Titan have a really great history out there. And you've been to 35 concerts of Kiss?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Oh my God, you're a really happy man.
I am. And I've painted my face at many of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
and I only been to Korn concerts.
Oh yeah. I've seen Korn. I've seen Korn. I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of concerts. I have a pretty wide musical taste, like a lot of people do. So it's not that Kiss is the only band I like, but they're the ones I've seen times.
That's great. Thank you for your speech, Darin. It was very interesting. We'll meet on our other events, I think. I
Yeah.
wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
I hope so too.
Yeah. So have a great day.
Thanks, Nikita. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Bye, Darin.